Now, in response to current global economic uncertainties, including interest rate fluctuations and inflation concerns, One Global Capital is adjusting its investment strategy to manage risk while still targeting attractive returns. The firm is focusing on diversifying its portfolio across resilient sectors, emphasizing defensive assets and inflation-protected investments. On See Today Business Talk, we will dig deeper on that matter with One Global Capital Chief Investment and Risk Officer. We have Mr. Dallas Whitehead in the studio. Hello. Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Well, we certainly want to hear all about this because this is in times of uncertainty, it's really, really important to have the plan or, contingency plans necessary, right? So given the current global economic uncertainties, including, as mentioned before, how is One Capital Group adapting its investment strategy to manage risk while still being able to, target attractive returns?
Yes. What we've done is we've focused on the income recurring assets, so the assets we hold in our portfolio, and strengthening our base across accommodation, hotels, retail centres, and really focusing on the clients and their experience in those centres, so we differentiate ourselves from others in the market. So that's increasing our returns for our investors and strengthening our returns. So as the market becomes more favourable, especially in Australia and Sydney, that we're ready to actually launch into more development activities.
Development activities. Well, One Capital Group also has been involved in several high-profile developments. I see here, when you make a decision to decide on a new project, what key factors do you consider and how do you balance it? We know there are market demands versus long-term investment objectives.
Yeah. So Iwan Sunito, is, who everyone knows in Indonesia, has built a real community within One Global Capital. And when we look at either going forward with a development or not, there's a senior team of multidisciplined people that actually look at the development, all the risks, what we can mitigate, what we can't mitigate. And before we do proceed, we actually like to see that we can add value to all stakeholders, not just the investor, but also the end user, and we're approaching the market at the right time. So that's a fairly in-depth process that we actually undergo on each strategic decision before we move forward. It's very hard to deliver value. It's very easy to move forward too quickly and destroy value. So we're quite a conservative company that when we decide to move forward, we're all on board from a multidisciplinary approach, and that we're all focused on delivering value for our stakeholders.
It's very interesting because you've also, when we talk about development and adding value, we also want, sustainability factors nowadays that it's become a very, it's become a market demand perhaps even,
Yes.
right? So how does One Capital Group integrate sustainability and, environmental, social and governance, ESG criteria into your investment decisions? And what role do these considerations play in your risk management approach?
Yes. We're quite a unique company. So we go from initial sourcing of the site through design, through to construction and delivery, through to marketing, sales, and through to servicing the end user. So not a lot of companies go from the absolute birth of a project to the care for the project right at the end after we've sold to investors. We do have a team that looks at all in each aspect as we move through the project, from environmental sustainability, even from sourcing products close to where the project's at. We're currently looking at one project in Sydney where we're looking to not demolish a structure, rather reuse the whole structure, which not only benefits the environment because you're not taking thousands of tonnes of concrete to landfill and then replacing it with new thousands of tonnes of concrete. There's a cost benefit to the investors of nearly 25% of the whole construction cost, and then the end user actually gets a product that they can say has a lower carbon footprint than what it had before. So adaptive reuse is a big focus. Also, from Iwan and his beliefs, he likes to introduce a lot of natural environment back into his projects. So there's a large focus on open areas, natural areas, a lot of focus on water through the project, areas where communities can come together, both communities within the project, but also communities external to the project. So engaging the external community to be able to come together and form a bond and create value going forward.
Well, those are certainly things that are not being, little things that aren't really being, not being paid attention and not get, little things that don't get enough attention a lot of times. I'm very curious, how long did it take for One Capital Group to realize that, okay, these are necessary. It's necessary for us to look at sustainability options.
Yes. And
how much research did it take to actually find suitable options for the clients that you have?
Well, this is an ongoing process. Ewan's taken the opportunity to rebuild his team over the last 12 months. We've brought together, I think our strength is we've brought together industry experts with a lot of experience from varied backgrounds. We have people within the senior management team of the business that are in their 30s and have only had exposure mainly in Sydney. That ranges through to people in their 70s that have had global experience through the Middle East, through Asia, through Australia. So our construction team has had over 40 years experience through Ireland, England, Europe and in Australia. And that builds a team that actually then starts to research and has a natural curiosity to be better than what we were yesterday. So when you say how much time's been invested, we invest time every day and we learn every day and we try and get a little bit better every day.
Well, it's big kudos for being so open about it, because a lot of companies feel the challenge, right, to actually move on to that direction and find the innovations that would actually benefit them as well. So there also has been some speculation about the potential for an IPO in the coming years. So particularly as One Capital Group continues to grow now, how are you preparing the company for such a transition, if there will be, and what would be the key drivers to deciding if an IPO makes sense in the next 5 to 7 years?
I'll go back to a common discussion we have in the company. We don't believe big is better. We believe be better, and that will drive volume. So be better first, volume will follow. Okay, so we do have a set plan and a set strategic direction over the next 7 years. We are executing upon that plan. We're probably about 30% away through the plan, so there's a lot more execution to do. There's processes that we need to put in place to underpin a larger company. They are being put in place now. We're not looking to grow and then go, oh geez, we should have put that process in last year. So those processes are being invested in now. So we're well on the journey over the next 5 to 7 years. I won't say to list, I'll say our goal is to list. What that looks like today and what eventuates in 5 to 7 years' time may be slightly different, but the direction is there, yes.
So we're in Indonesia right now. There's a lot of opportunity, and One Capital Group has strong ties to international investors because you work in international environment, including those from Indonesia. How do you view the role of Indonesian investors in your overall strategy, and what steps is the company taking to strengthen its relationship with Indonesian investment communities?
I've actually been with One Global Capital for a total of 6 months now. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ewan for over 22 years, and it took me, I'm a slow learner, so it took me 21 and a half years to get the courage to join Ewan in his vision, which is now our vision. And this is our first official trip together overseas. And we invested some time in Hong Kong. We invested some time in Singapore, but I can reassure every Indonesian that over half the trip has been invested in Indonesia, and speaking to Indonesians on the ground, both updating our friends and investors on what the opportunities are, what we've achieved to date, but also listening to the investors, listening to people that may not have invested but are interested in investing on some of their concerns, on some of their questions about what's going on in Australia, and having that conversation. So I can reassure all Indonesians that we've invested over half our time of a fairly substantial trip listening and talking to our friends in Indonesia.
So what has been, your general, your general impression so far, having met so many, Indonesian investment communities and investment people here, and what are some of the takeaways that you find very, reassuring and optimistic for the future?
I've got to be honest. This is my first time to Indonesia. Ewan's spoken for years about Indonesia to me, described how exciting it is, how innovative it is, and how focused on achieving growth in living standards.
Yeah.
And I must say, wow, 48 hours in Indonesia has been very impressive, and the warmth that I've received is overwhelming. And going forward, I think Indonesia will be a big part of ASEAN and Asia, and it's up to us and our friends in Indonesia to unlock that value for each other.
Well, thank you so much, and hopefully you get to enjoy more of Indonesia in the next couple of hours that you are going to stay here, because it's only been
Another few days.
Yeah, that's
Another
great.
few days.
Well, hopefully you're not going to be stuck in the city, right?
No, we're going to Surabaya.
Surabaya,
yeah, I said that right, hopefully, and Bali.
Well,
My first time in Bali.
well, after 22 years of knowing an Indonesian friend, it's a highly time you came to visit, right? Well, hope to have you back in the studio very soon with an update of how things are going with One Capital Group. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Well, that was the Business Talk with Dallas Whitehead from One Global Capital, and you can stay connected with us on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Our handle's at CToday News. We're also available online at ctodaynews.com.